with you, they were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore. And they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He will come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. On the appointed day, in a rowboat, he went out to this boat and he negotiated with the British officials. And they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged on a one-for-one basis. Francis Scott Key, jubilant with the fact that he'd been successful, went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of humanity, men. And he said, men, I've got news for you tonight. You're free. He said, tonight I have negotiated successfully your return to the colonies. He said, you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, out of your chains. As he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore, the admiral came and he said, we have a slight problem. He said, we will still honor our commitment to release these men, but it'll be merely academic after tonight. It won't matter. And Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, he said, tonight we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either capitulate and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or you see that fort right over there, Fort Henry? He said, we're going to remove it from the face of the earth. He said, how are you going to do that? He said, if you will, scan the horizon of the sea. And as he looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And he said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all of the gunpowder, all of the armament is being called upon to demolish that fort. It will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, the war is over. These men would be free anyway. He said, you can't shell that fort. He said, that's a large fort. He said, it's full of women and children. He says, it's predominantly not a military fort. He said, don't worry about it. They said, we've left them a way out. And he said, what's that? He said, do you see that flag way up on the rampart? He said, we have told them that if they will lower that flag, the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you'll now be under British rule. Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And they said, how many ships? He said, hundreds. The ships got closer. Francis Scott Key went back up on top and he said, men, I'll shout down to you what's going on as we watch. As twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the ocean as it does at sunset, suddenly the British war fleet unleashed. He says the sound was deafening. There were so many guns that there were no reliefs. He said it was absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, although dark, was suddenly lit. And he says from down below, all he could hear the men, the prisoners, saying was, tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying over the rampart? Tell us. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling, every time the bomb would explode and it would be close to the flag, they could see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb, and Francis Scott Key would report down to the men below, it's still up. It's not down. The admiral came and he said, your people are insane. He said, what's the matter with them? He said, don't they understand this is an impossible situation? Francis Scott Key said he remembered what George Washington had said. He said the thing that sets the American Christian apart from all other people in the world is he will die on his feet before he'll live on his knees. The admiral said, we have now instructed all of the guns to focus on the rampart to take that flag down. He said, we don't understand something. Our reconnaissance tells us that that flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We don't understand that. But he said, now we're about to bring every gun for the next 3 hours to bear on that point. Francis Scott Key said the barrage was unmerciful. all that he could hear was the men down below praying. The prayer, God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it. Sunrise came. He said there was a heavy mist hanging over the land, but the rampart was tall enough. There stood the flag, completely nondescript, in shreds. The flagpole itself was at a crazy angle, but the flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he'd found had happened was that that flagpole and that flag had suffered repetitious direct hits. And when it had fallen, but men, fathers, who knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground, although knowing that all of the British guns were trained on it, walked over and held it up humanly until they died. Their bodies were removed and others took their place. Francis Scott Key said what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle were patriots' bodies. He penned the song, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Or the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that Star Spangled Banner yet fly and wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" The debt was demanded. The price, it was paid.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets spread clear, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that Star Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, say, does that Star Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
listening to Up with America on Talk 94.5 WTKN Radio. We'll be right back.
Spacious skies for amber waves of grain.
The only local conservative morning show on the Grand Strand. The Liz Calloway Show with Nick Summers. 6 to 10. Weekday mornings on Talk 94.5.
Here's Tony Zach from Mr. Sparky.
Without electricity, you don't usually get...
Tom Heron hosts Up with America. Saturdays at noon. And only on Talk 94.5.
So the reason, folks, that we decided to play that wonderful song, which was my father's favorite song. In fact, as we all left his funeral back in 1999, that's the song we played. He was in the Army Air Corps. He flew the hump back in 1943 and 44. He loved the Air Force. This last week was the Air Force's 73rd birthday. So I thought we'd give them a rousing cheer. And this place around here, of course, we have lots of guys from the Air Force because the Air Force Base used to be right there where our wonderful airport
That's
is.
how we ended up here.
You got that right. We've got a lot to cover today, and I can see we don't have much time, but that's typical. I do want to say one thing. Let's go back to the national anthem just for a minute. As you guys know, I hope, we're boycotting the NFL. I'm sick and tired of it, okay? The bottom line is, until every player stands again, I'm not watching the NFL, and guess what? There's a whole lot of us joining it. And yesterday, I learned that right here in North Myrtle Beach is a restaurant called Bowie's on the Boulevard, in which they are boycotting the NFL. So a great thing to do now on Sunday afternoons at this really cool restaurant. I had never been there, Glenn. I don't know if you have. It's only been open, I think, about 18 months, and it's right on the boulevard, right on the ocean. They have fantastic seafood and fantastic burgers. And Sunday afternoons and Monday nights is a great place to go because you don't have to deal with the NFL. Okay, so there, I dropped off maybe 100 of our bumper stickers up there. And if it all works out right, I'm going to try and get the owner, a guy named Weldon Boyd, to give us a call next week, and we'll have him on the radio and talk a little bit about that. In the meantime, I posted something about them on our Facebook page, which is Facebook/groups/UpWithAmerica. And you can learn all about them there. And if you have a company or a restaurant or anybody in your area, no matter where it is in the United States, that's joining the boycott, then let us know, and we'll post that on that Facebook page as well. Finally, one last thing before we start taking phone calls here. Yesterday, we lost a great American. No two ways about it. And I don't care whether you're a conservative or a liberal, but the bottom line goes like this. I started writing this. I think I'll stick with it. The notorious RBG is gone. Last night, after battling cancer for years, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg finally succumbed and has gone to meet her longtime rival and best friend, Justice Antonin Scalia, who we lost about 4 years ago. Justice Ginsburg was appointed by President Clinton and had served for 27 years on the Supreme Court. If you're not as a conservative as I am, Ginsburg was not on my list of favorite Supreme Court justices through the years because she interpreted the Constitution as a living document that could change with the times, with the winds, even with the fads of the day. See, I don't believe that. But I do have immense respect for who she was and for what she achieved. You'll find much longer and better biographies online today than what I'm going to say right now, and on television for the next few weeks, I'm quite sure.
Oh, yeah.
But here's what I fear you will not find. You won't find the media using her as an example of how great we are, of American exceptionalism, and of how and why we must learn, again, the notion of respect and honor in spite of differences of opinion. To those among us who believe that America hasn't been fair to us, whether as groups, that we deserve some sort of special treatment for the dirty deeds of our ancestors, or those who would destroy our entire system of government that has worked remarkably well for almost 250 years, listen up. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had every reason to fail. She was a woman, she was Jewish, and she was tiny. Not exactly the description of someone who would become one of the most powerful tiny Jewish women in the history of the earth. You see, the notorious RBG demanded the best of herself and of all of us, and still respected those who disagreed with her for legitimate reasons. I can never wax as poetic as did one of my favorite justices when Scalia once described her, instead of her decision-making and interpretations, what's not to like except her views on the law. It's like, with few exceptions, Ruth Bader Ginsburg believed in a Supreme Court with seemingly limitless powers over society, a living, evolving constitution that changes with the times. I think the only major case in which I agreed with her was probably the Citizens United case back in 2010, when, among other things, the court ruled that for all practical purposes, corporations, even shadowy political action groups, have the same rights as citizens, as people, and therefore can give as much money as they want to, and to political candidates and causes, hiding behind the curtain of anonymity. So, listen, folks, Justice Ginsburg was 87 when she died last night. Surely her death will cause even more political angst and commotion and contention, as if we need that. But with any luck, her death will remind some Americans and teach others that this system of government works if we work it. So farewell, Justice Ginsburg. Godspeed. For someone so small in stature, you have giant shoes to fill. Well, what have we got here? My friend Glenn, how are you, by the way?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm good. Did you have a good week?
It was a great week. Busy, very, very busy.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think I did too. It's our whole community is trying to adjust to this COVID thing and sort of open back up again, but we're finding it hard to do that. You know what I mean? It's like, so who have we got on the line here?
That's your buddy.
My buddy Richard?
Yep.
Richard, we probably have not much time. Sorry, I do this to you every time, but what's going on this morning, my friend?
Well, real quickly, thanks for playing that piece on the Star Spangled Banner. I love that. And it brings up the question that we have to ask ourselves, what price of freedom? And then for Justice Ginsburg, yeah, we disagreed with her, but we respected everything she did in her life. She didn't know the word quit. And more people need to understand that. All right, let me, just some quickly here. The late Dr. J. Rufus Fears, F-E-A-R-S, an esteemed historian who has written about leaders throughout the centuries, defined the difference between a politician and a statesman as the latter having four qualities. 1, a bedrock of principles. 2, a moral compass. 3, a vision of where he sought to lead. And 4, the ability to persuade and gain adherence to that vision. Now, since we're in the middle of a highly contested presidential election season, allow me to add to the list specific to the United States. A, to sustain and uphold the United States Constitution. B, honor the oath of office. C, desire and work to put the needs of the citizens and nation first. D, ability to empower others to do a better job. I think these are some things that we need to consider as we approach November 3rd and how we decide to vote.
Well, aren't you just all over it once again, as you typically are?
Yeah. Let me put in a plug for Dr. Fears. Now, he has passed away, but he was really an esteemed professor. He did an 18-part series, The Story of Freedom in America, and he was a professor at Oklahoma University, and they put it online. And just search him, J. Rufus Fears, and scroll down. You'll see that, and it's worth taking your time and watching that series.
All right, Richard, you're a gentleman and a scholar. You know what? Do me a favor. See if you can access our Facebook page and post something, and I'll get back to you on that. I'm not familiar with him, and I want to become so.
Oh, yeah, you really do. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it, bud.
Take a break. We'll
Sounds
be
like a
back with
plan. We'll be right back.
More Up with America with Tom Harris.
This is Liz Calloway. You're listening to Up with America on Talk 94.5.
Dependable service. DependableService.com.
The Army National Guard plays a vital role in your community. We're on the front lines supporting essential personnel, first responders, law enforcement, and medical professionals, delivering food, supplies, and medicine, keeping communities safe, making a difference. During emergencies, we're always ready, always there. Learn more about part-time service in the Army National Guard at NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the South Carolina Army National Guard. Aired by the South Carolina Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hey, this is Liz Calloway. Did you know that there is a local prayer event coinciding with the National and Global Day of Prayer in Washington, D.C.? Yes, it's called The Return. So come pray with us, and together we will save America. It's happening Saturday, September 26th at 5 p.m. at the North Myrtle Beach Sports Park Amphitheater. Nick and I will see you there. For details, visit odchurchnmb.com.
Broadcasting live and on location. Talk 94.5.
You're listening to Up with America every Saturday at noon with Tom Harris and only on Talk 94.5.
What would bring a young man to rise up from his birthplace?
I absolutely love that song. Tell you a story about that song, Glenn. About the time we were putting Up with America together, which was almost 10 years ago. I heard that song somewhere, and I searched all over. I could not find anything about it. Finally found out that it had been written by a guy named Dustin James, who's in Nashville, a struggling writer. And so I got in touch with him, and I said, I'm crazy about this song, and he sent me to a place I could hear the whole thing on YouTube. And then I sent him a letter, and he sent me a letter back saying that Up With America can use it anytime we want to as our theme song or whatever we want. I may actually do that one of these days. We're trying to decide what's going to be our standard song, and there's just something totally unique about that. And that girl's voice, her name is Brittany Black. She's awesome.
Yeah, beautiful too, by the way.
Yeah, she is.
I'm on my side. I get to see the video.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
don't get to see that over on your side.
That's true. So I want to spend a couple minutes. You know, I've got we've developed friendships all across the country now of people who are sometimes calling in, but as much or more than that, they're sending stuff to us, posting stuff on our Facebook page and so on and so forth. A friend of mine, Mike Kilman, up in Pennsylvania, sent me the Democratic Party platform, and he even made it as a bibliography. I'm going to leave a copy of it for you, Glenn, because at the end of each subject matter, he says what page it's on in the platform. Oh, yeah. I also have the whole platform if you want it. So we're gonna entertain folks. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Number one is to immediately restore voting rights for convicted felons. That's the number one thing. How about this? Immediately give citizenship for illegal aliens. That's on page 63. Next item, eliminate border walls and immigration enforcement of any kind. Folks, I am not making this up. I mean, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this, because I want you to understand that what you do on November 3rd is not just casting a vote for or against President Trump, or for or against Joe Biden, or for the Democrats or for the Republicans. What you're doing is casting a vote for this list of things. You pretty much already know what Trump believes in.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just keep going for fun. On page 61, they want universal health care and Medicaid for all Americans, including all aliens. That means you and I are paying for that.
Mm-hmm.
They want to increase the minimum wage from $10 to $15. Page 65, free college for everyone. Free college for everyone. Forgiveness of all student loans. Provide federal funding for abortion for all women and all girls. That's on page 83. Let's see. We're going to pass the Green New Deal. Okay, now you've been hearing about this, folks. Let me go through it real quick. The United States would be a net zero greenhouse gas by 2050. That means closing all coal and natural gas power plants within 15 years. Within 10 years, actually 9 years, all new construction in the United States must be net zero greenhouse gases. So the annual U.S. budget today is about $5 trillion a year, somewhere give or take, not including COVID donations. The projected cost of the Green New Deal over the next 30 years is $70 trillion. That's above the $5 trillion a year. We're going to also rejoin the Paris Peace, not the Paris Peace Accords, the Paris Climate Agreement. We're going to create a new federal agency of 100,000 people to trace every American's whereabouts. We're going to provide funding to facilitate vote from home and mail-in voting. Are you kidding me? This is going to be, we're going to be talking about who won or lost in February. Then we're going to make gun manufacturers responsible and liable for how their guns are used. We're going to declare and treat drug use as a mental illness instead of an illegal activity. We're going to declare the support of the rights of Black Lives Matter, multigender, and preferential treatment for gays wanting to immigrate to America. That's page 63. And then, drum roll, we're going to make Washington, D.C. We're going to make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico the 51st and 52nd states of the United States of America.
Yay! And then we'll have as many states as we have in a deck of cards. That's great.
And just as bad as effective, too. Unbelievable. How much time we got left before? We got a little time, right?
You got a couple minutes. You need to take a break, and we'll come back. And so go for a couple minutes.
You mean take a break now?
You do whatever you want to do.
Let's take a break now, and then we'll go, because I got something fun to do.
I got a little bumper music here.
Okay, good.
Young Americans.
It's an hour of inspiration, patriotism, and common sense talk about the greatness of America with your host, Tom Herron. Up with America, right here on Talk 94.5.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Wow, I haven't heard that in just a long, long time. Ray Charles. Wow. That was a killer piece. Killer piece. Do we have a caller coming on the line? Is that what we had there? No? Okay. I don't know. You know, I'm just learning this game. That's all right. So I have a question for you. I think what I'd like to do is, since I gave you a copy of this thing, somebody that's a friend of mine sent me a email the other day with this adorable thing called What Love Means. People are going to say, what's he talking about? This has nothing to do. Frankly, I think it has everything to do with Up with America. This is what a group of professionals posed this question to a group of 4 to 8-year-olds, and it's called What Does Love Mean? And the answers they got were broader, deeper, and more profound than anyone could have ever imagined. I've chosen a few of the best. I'm going to read the first one. You hop in whenever you want to, Glenn.
Okay.
When my grandmother got arthritis, she couldn't bend over and paint her toenails anymore. So my grandfather does it for her all the time, even when his hands got arthritis too. Oh. That's what love is. That's from Rebecca, who's 8 years old.
When somebody loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know that your name is safe in their mouth.
Oh, my God.
That's Billy, age 4.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Love is when a girl puts on perfume and a boy puts on shaving cologne and they go out and smell each other. That's from Carl, who is 5. Okay.
Love is when you go out to eat and give somebody most of your French fries without making them give you any of theirs. That's Chrissy, age 6, who's
the truth. That's
very generous with her fries.
Absolutely. Love is when mommy makes coffee for daddy and takes a sip before giving it to him to make sure it tastes okay. That's from Danny, who is 8 years old.
If you want to learn to love better, you should start with a friend who you hate.
Oh, man.
Nikita,
Oof.
age 6. What things that come out of kids' mouths.
We need more of that, little girl. Holy smokes. Let's see. How about this? Love is when you tell a guy you like his shirt and then he wears it every day. That was from Noel, age 7.
Love is like a little old woman and a little old man who are still friends even after they know each other so well.
True.
From Tommy, age 6.
True enough. Let's see. During my piano recital, I was on a stage and I was scared. I looked at all the people watching me, and then I saw my daddy waving and smiling. He was the only one waving and smiling. I wasn't scared anymore. That was from Cindy, 8 years old.
Love is when mommy and daddy when mommy gives daddy the best piece of the chicken.
Yeah, that's pretty much in every household, I think.
Yeah.
Love is when your puppy licks your face even after you left him alone all day in the house by himself. That was from Mary Ann.
You really shouldn't say I love you unless you mean it. But if you mean it, you should say it a lot. People forget.
And
Jessica,
we wrap this
AJ.
up. The winner was a 4-year-old child whose next-door neighbor was an elderly gentleman who had recently lost his wife. And upon seeing the man cry, the little boy went into the old gentleman's yard, climbed up onto his lap, and just sat there. When his mother asked what he had said to the neighbor, the little boy said, "Nothing, Mommy. I just helped him cry."
Oh.
Yeah,
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just thought that was something unusual for a change. You know, we need a little love.
We need a lot of love right now.
Boy, you're not kidding. All right. So a couple of little points I would add. Did you know that we have already found 349,000 dead registrants on the voter?
It doesn't surprise me.
It's going to get worse, my friend. I'm telling you. This was according to the Public Interest Legal Foundation. That number is a major improvement over the last time this happened in 2012 when it was 2 million deceased voters. But, I mean, we're looking at a potential incredible disaster here on November
absolutely.
3rd. I don't see how we get through this. I've been doing elections and campaigns for a very long time, and I don't see an answer for this problem that's going to be acceptable to anybody.
Well, we know about absentee voting, and that's been accepted throughout the years. I think their point is mailing out millions of, voter registration or, so people can vote, and they're going to go to dead people or people who don't care or incompetent people.
Absolutely.
I think you need to be competent to go to the polls.
And there's a huge difference. I do too.
Yeah.
Now, some people would challenge that.
Yeah.
But the big difference here, folks, between absentee ballots and mail-out ballots is you have to request an absentee ballot, and then you have to prove who you are. And once you've done that, then it's your ballot.
Right.
Now, if you want to give it to somebody else and let them fill it out and send it, then that's your business. But you have to sign it. That's very different than just willy-nilly mailing out tens of thousands of ballots. So,
Right.
It's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy 6 months. This violence that's going on in our cities just is never ending. I don't see how that helps anybody at all on either side of the equation. Either Trump is not stopping it or they're propelling it. It's just one thing after another, So it's very frustrating. It's very damaging. I talked to my son-in-law who's in New York, who is a firefighter. And they're actually considering moving away from New York after being there his whole life, just because they think it's too dangerous for the kids. And the kind of information they're having to deal with and the stuff that they're being taught in schools. It's just truly pathetic, So I think we can get a grip on this. I just don't know. I'll put it this way. Up With America is going overboard right now. I have news. The website is done. It will be up probably tomorrow.
Sweet.
So you'll be able to interact with us and send us your ideas, and we'll be able to do the same thing going back. And so I'm thrilled with that because we've sort of been trying to get the train going again, and I think we're about there finally. So I'm pretty excited about that stuff. I think we can make an impact. The question we are debating is, where do we start? And you know what, Glenn? I'll tell you what. We actually had a meeting where I sent out a survey of 15 smart solutions for America and 6 urgent solutions for the crises we're facing, and asked people to rank them in order. Which of these things do you think we should take on first? Almost everybody checked all 15 of the smart solutions as number 1, and all 6 is the crisis we have to do everything at once, and that's just an impossibility.
Yeah.
So we have to find some way to do some of this stuff, Anyway. All right.
You want to end up with a little Paul Harvey?
Let's do a little Paul Harvey right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take it into the break here at the top of the hour. Tom, always great to see you. Up with America will be back again next week from 12 to 1 p.m.
You got it. And thanks to WTCAN and the staff here and the wonderful people. Thanks for putting up with this show.
Hey, man, you make us even more American.
Yeah.
Americans, the how and the why of our beloved republic are so much better known and understood than the who. The United States of America was born in 1776, but it was conceived 169 years before that. The earliest settlers had watered the New World with much sweat. They had built substantial holdings for themselves, for their families. And when the time came to separate themselves from a tyranny an ocean away, at best it meant starting all over again after the ravages of war. Researching what you're about to hear gave a whole new dimension to my reverence for our nation's first citizens. All others of the world's revolutions, before and since, were initiated by men who had nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. Our founders had everything to lose and nothing to gain, except one thing. Hello, Americans. I'm Paul Harvey. You remember the cherry tree fiction. A long time after you have forgotten the more earth-shaking history-making episodes in the life of George Washington. You have misplaced in your memory the details of Ben Franklin's statesmanship, but you remember his flying a kite. Joyce Kilmer was a great military hero, but the only thing you personally recall about him is his poetic tribute to trees. Maybe of this current decade, that which will be remembered best will not be its wars and its moon rockets or its crumbling frontiers or the giants who lived and died. Maybe all that'll survive to linger in the day-by-day vocabulary of generations yet unborn may be the songs of a Memphis minstrel or the reincarnation of electric automobiles. But for any eve of the 4th of July, I, Paul Harvey, do herewith bequeath unto you something to remember. You may not be able to quote one line from the Declaration of Independence at this moment. Henceforth, you'll always be able to quote at least one line. It's in the last paragraph where you will recall when I remind you. It says, "We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." In the Pennsylvania State House that's now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the best men from each of the colonies sat down together. This was a very fortunate hour in our nation's history, one of those rare occasions in the lives of men when we had greatness to spare. These were men of means, well-educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists. 9 were farmers, owners of large plantations. On June 11, a committee sat down to draw up a Declaration of Independence. We were going to tell the British fatherland no more rule by redcoats. Below the dam of ruthless foreign rule, the stream of freedom was running shallow and muddy, and we were going to light a fuse to dynamite that dam. This pact, as Burke later put it, was a partnership between the living and the dead and the yet unborn. There was no bigotry, there was no demagoguery in this group. All had shared hardships. Jefferson finished a draft of the document in 17 days. Congress adopted it in July, and so much is familiar history. But now, King George III had denounced all rebels in America as traitors. Punishment for treason was hanging. The names now so familiar to you from the several signatures on that Declaration of Independence, the names were kept secret for 6 months, for each knew the full meaning of that magnificent last paragraph in which his signature pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. 56 men placed their names beneath that pledge. 56 men knew when they signed that they were risking everything. They knew if they won this fight, the best they could expect would be years of hardship in a struggling nation. And if they lost, they'd face a hangman's rope. But they signed the pledge. And here is the documented fate of that gallant 56. Carter Braxton of Virginia, wealthy planter, trader, saw his ships swept from the seas. To pay his debts, he lost his home and all of his properties and died in rags. Thomas Lynch Jr., who signed that pledge, was a third-generation rice grower, aristocrat, large plantation owner. After he signed, his health failed. His wife and he set out for France to regain his failing health. Their ship never got to France, was never heard from again. Thomas McKean of Delaware was so harassed by the enemy that he was forced to move his family 5 times in 5 months. He served in Congress without pay, his family in poverty and in hiding. Vandals looted the properties of Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and Rutledge and Middleton. Thomas Nelson Jr. of Virginia raised $2 million on his own signature to provision our allies, the French fleet. After the war, he personally paid back the loans, wiped out his entire estate, and he was never reimbursed by his government. In the final battle for Yorktown, he, Nelson, urged General Washington to fire on his, Nelson's, own home, which was occupied by Cornwallis. It was destroyed. Thomas Nelson Jr. had pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor.